Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jake, the Scary Story Guy, and today we're talking about Companion, a brand new theatrical release starring Sophie, Thatcher, and Jack Quaid. Now, I do want to say this is going to be a spoiler-free review if you have seen the trailer. So if you have managed to avoid the trailer so far, good for you. Here are your next 3 steps. First, like this video. Second, subscribe to the channel, or you can flip them around, subscribe, then like. I'm not picky. And third, you must run to your nearest theater and see Companion immediately. Or drive. It's probably faster to drive. Because to answer the question I pose in the title of this video, yes, Companion is in fact the first great movie of 2025. Now, if you've seen the trailer, you know that it kind of rides the line between being a horror comedy, and again, pause the video now and stop watching if you haven't seen the trailer, and science fiction, because Companion is the story of Iris, a woman on vacation with her boyfriend who turns out not to be a woman at all. Iris is a companion robot, which is basically exactly what it sounds like, a fully customizable robot girlfriend. And I understand why they chose to reveal that in the trailer, because it would be kind of hard to build intrigue for this movie without that. But this actually isn't revealed until a little ways into the movie, and so I spent the first little while thinking like, man, I'm really enjoying this. How much more would I be enjoying this if I was completely blindsided by that reveal? I had a similar problem with a movie that was released last year called Abigail, in which a little girl who gets kidnapped is actually a vampire, and the trailer shows that, but the movie doesn't actually reveal it until like almost halfway through. Anyway, even though the marketing probably maybe gives too much away here, I just really don't have much else bad to say about Companion. This is an incredibly entertaining movie. And talking about it, we've got to start with Sophie Thatcher and Jack Quaid, because these two were the perfect casting choices for this. I first saw Sophie a couple of years ago in a movie called The Boogeyman, and I actually went back and rewatched the video that I posted on that, and I said, the movie's fine, but this girl, Sophie Thatcher, is definitely the best part. I hope she does a lot more horror movies. And I got my wish, because last year she quite brilliantly played a Mormon missionary in Heretic, a film that ended up making my year-end top 10 horror movies list, and now she's the main attraction here in Companion. And the movie really hinges on her performance, because she's got to strike a really precarious balance, right? Because if she acts too robotic, it takes the audience out of it. Like, who's paying for this? Who's gonna bring their obviously robot girlfriend out in public? But you also want her to be able to make little subtle facial expressions and movements that reveal the truth. And so for the first part of this movie, you're not like totally clocking that she's a robot, but you're definitely realizing like something's a little off with this girl. And Jack Quaid, man, this character is so unlikable in the best way. Like, it never goes over the top, like you lose your sense of realism, like he starts talking like a comic book villain or something, but man, he is a piece of shit in this. And I think on top of Thatcher's performance being necessary for this movie to work, this guy needs to be believable as this dude who's kind of presenting like a pretty normal face out to the public, but then you dive inside and he's just so bitter and resentful in a way that doesn't end up feeling like a caricature. And speaking of which, this movie is definitely an entry in the good for her cinematic universe, if you will, because its main target is absolutely men who view women as nothing more than commodities, as objects. And a lesser movie would have absolutely beaten you over the head with that moral message, and many movies of that kind have been made lately. This may be an unpopular take. I personally think The Substance could have benefited from a little more subtlety in that regard. It's easy to imagine a movie where Iris is just given like a million lines of girl boss dialogue that's meant to just get applause from the audience, and a movie that is just constantly opting for political cheap shots or culture war references. But Companion stays remarkably clean of all that, and I think that works to the movie's advantage for a couple of reasons. First, and most obvious, is just kind of the famous Michael Jordan line, Republicans buy sneakers too, right? The culture war has been infecting everything for about a decade now, and I think people have really grown weary of it, of this heavy-handed moral messaging kind of coming from both sides when it's just like a commercial for fruit snacks or whatever. But second, I actually don't mind heavy-handed moral messaging in my movies as long as the quality of the movie itself isn't being sacrificed. I think a movie that came out a couple of years ago called Promising Young Woman is a good example of that. But all too often it seems like filmmakers are more interested in getting like righteous head nods from the audience. Like, I do agree with that. I'm a good person too. Than they are in actually telling a story. Companion is a movie where the story and the characters and the craftsmanship come first. And yes, there are themes and morals and messages throughout the movie, but they never rise above the importance of the quality of the film itself. Other things I liked. Companion is a very smart movie. We've seen these AI movies kind of go off the rails before, making robots way too powerful, or maybe things happen in the plot just for the sake of making a scene, a spectacle, some big explosion explosion or whatever. But for a movie about futuristic technology gone wrong, Companion stays very grounded, very down to earth. For instance, you see this in the trailer, but Iris gets a hold of her control panel and she sees that Josh, her boyfriend, has set her intelligence dial to 40%. And so she cranks it all the way up to 100. Now, in a lesser movie, this would turn her into basically some supercomputer. But let's be real. If you're in the business of making companion robots, you don't want this thing to be capable of, like, building a machine gun out of paper clips. So in this movie, Iris setting her intelligence setting to 100 just basically makes her, like, a very smart but normal person, right? Like someone who get into an Ivy League school, you know, but they're not gonna write, like, newspaper articles about her when she's 10 or whatever. And this means that at a certain point in the movie, she's obviously gonna start making some smart decisions and you know, critical thinking under pressure in interesting ways. But at no point does she actually start to feel overpowered, you know, like she's somehow inhuman in her ability to process. And I think this results in, you know, the viewer recognizing that Iris is not a human being, but still seeing her as a person, and therefore a worthy protagonist. Companion is also a very funny movie. It's rarely laugh out loud funny. There are a couple of moments, but it's more just like amusing kind of the entire time throughout. And I think that's a good balance to strike, because this was not meant to be just a straight up comedy, right? There's a lot of dark themes here, some violence and death and frankly abuse. And so I felt like this tone was basically spot on, right? Always entertaining, often amusing, sometimes funny, but also sometimes thought-provoking and dark. Is it a horror movie? Well, it's certainly listed as one, but it's a horror movie in the same way that, like, Megan is a horror movie. It's operating in that genre, but it's not intending to scare anybody. So, you know, you'll see it listed as a horror movie. It's obviously getting reviewed on the Scary Story Guys channel, but don't go in expecting to be scared at any point. So guys, at the end of the day, this is my first wholehearted movie recommendation of the year. Companion is insanely entertaining, phenomenally well acted. It's just a good time had by all kind of movie. I'm trying to think of anybody I know that would walk out of this movie being like, yeah, that sucked. I just can't think of anyone. It's just very sharp, but not too full of itself. A real, like, crowd pleaser kind of movie. Yeah, can't recommend it enough. It's a great date movie for Valentine's Day coming up, or, you know, maybe not, depending on what kind of a boyfriend you are, I guess. So I'm gonna give Companion 4.5 stars out of 5. All right, guys, as always, stay tuned for more spooky content coming soon. We got some Valentine's Day themed stuff coming up. I'm gonna go see the movie Heart Eyes and review that for you. I'm also gonna try and drop a list of 5 great horror movies to watch on Valentine's Day. So like I said, stay on the lookout for that. But in the meantime, thank you for watching this video, and here's hoping you survive to see the next one.